Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and today's show is going to be so much fun because I'm a big fan of writers. I love books, and today's guest, she is just a talented and outstanding writer. She's the author of the famous series of books that we're going to talk about a little bit. One in particular, the series The Rise and Fall of Danny Trueheart, which is just a phenomenal book. The series is great. She's got some upcoming projects. She's done television. She's done the big screen, behind the scenes, but just an outstanding, like I said, writer. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you the one and only Michele Kwasniewski. And Michele, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that introduction. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the show. This is, again, for a small town mom who's trying to break her way into the book business. This is just a really big deal for me. So thank you so much for shining a spotlight on my books and my writing. Thank you.
Well, believe me, you deserve it. Just like I said, I enjoy your work very much. Michele, I wanted to ask you this, though. Last night's guest that I had on, he came out with a book. It was called The Accidental Career, because a lot of times people's careers are accidental. But let me ask you, I'll start as far back to when you were let's say a teenager. Did you have a love for writing at all as a kid?
I've always loved writing. My mom fostered the love of reading in between my sister and I. We swapped books very, very early on. We'd read a book. You're going to love this. We'd swap books. I've always loved writing. I tried to read before I even could read. I had my little Mickey Mouse 45 player with my golden books, and I would follow along pretending to read. But I never really thought that I could write, even though I dreamed of writing, because I almost failed my grammar my grammar English class in 7th grade. I could not diagram a sentence to save my life. And my teacher was not very supportive. She was very critical. So I assumed, not being good with English grammar, I still have a baffling relationship with commas, according to my editors. I thought that meant I wasn't a good writer, but it turns out that it's not the case. You can just hire an editor to help you writing.
Right. And Michele, one of the things that's very challenging about being a writer, you mentioned it, the commas, the periods, all that stuff, the exclamation marks, all that stuff. But even harder is the fact that it is very hard when you're, say you're texting a friend or you're emailing somebody. It is hard not to put the letter I in everything you say, because it just makes so much more sense to say it. Mm-hmm. So you got to really it's one thing to write a book. It's one thing to write a screenplay. It's another thing, though, to do it and make it really sound efficient and believable. So, that to me is never, writing the book is hard, no doubt about it. But writing it properly is even more challenging, I would think.
I definitely think so. And that's why I rely on, first of all, after I do a draft, my first draft, I read the entire book out loud, because I want to make sure all my characters sound different. I'm one person, and so I use the same set of words. But if I'm writing 5 or 6 different people, I want to make sure they all don't sound the same. And I don't know if you've ever had that before, where you read a book and you're like, everyone sounds the same. They all use the same exclamation when they're happy, or they all use the same swear word when they're upset. So I like to differentiate everyone's language and their cadence, how they write. And for me, that comes from reading the book out loud. And then I hand my draft, usually my second or third draft, to trusted beta readers, usually family and friends, who will not hold back. Because if the story sucks or a point is not coming across, I can't have someone being nice to me and worried about me being upset. I need to know that this plot point is not coming through. And then so we'll kind of dig into it after they read it, and they're very honest with their praise. And also they feel comfortable saying that, this didn't come through. I didn't get that. This didn't seem to go anywhere. And as a writer, that helped me make a better story. And I do that every single time. But the first couple of times, handing someone your rough draft, it's like you're just walking naked into an auditorium. It's so, you're vulnerable. You've put your heart on the pages, and you're really hoping that the people who you're giving it to respect that. And I've been lucky enough to have a lot of my sister, my friend Jimmy, a lot of good beta readers who will give me honest opinions, but in a way that they're not really crushing my soul.
No doubt about it. And the other thing too, Michele, which I'm sure you've done, especially when you first, dove into the writing and stuff, is you have to read different books, for the simple fact that you can pick up a lot of things from reading books. You could pick up a lot of how the story should go, how you gotta, it's not easy to do. Everybody thinks it's easy, but to even just write one chapter, I mean, you got to do like 10 to 12 pages, if I'm not mistaken.
I definitely agree. I've learned to write from reading, and that's reading good books, reading bad books, reading fiction, reading nonfiction, everything under the sun. Because I have my favorite genres, but I actually don't write in my favorite genre. I love thrillers and mysteries, and I'm working up to that. But that's such a complicated form of writing that's going to be, I have like already a number of books planned out. So that's going to be like 4 or 5 books away. But I'm already working on my thriller now. But I do think that the best way to learn how to write is by reading and seeing what other people do, whether it works or not. And then you build your story. I think one of the few people that believes everyone can be a writer. It's 99% just sticking with it, because you can get better every single time you write, as long as you're willing to, you take your ego out of it and you listen to your readers to see what works and what doesn't. And you just get better every single time.
Right. And let me ask you this, Michele. Obviously, your work has been, again, behind the scenes with TV and with film, but you've also been a writer, as that's your passion. Did you ever think about writing for a newspaper when you were younger? I mean, did you ever have any, was there ever a thought of doing that, or you really weren't into that part of the writing style?
I think because I can be very shy at times. And so I think that's what put me off of, because even before interviews like this, I always get very nervous because I'm just, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to answer the question in a succinct manner? So I think the pressure of getting the answers for an article to give all the information that I could to the reader in a timely manner, I think that just got into my head. And so I never really thought that I could do that kind of writing. I think that's a whole nother level of writing that you're succinct, you're doing everything kind of on the fly usually. And it's just something that I've always been fascinated with, but I never felt that I could do.
Right. So in college, Michele, you took up technical theater, is that correct? I mean, that was the big thing you took up. And, listen, college isn't always going to teach you the rules of the game. Just like if you go to a radio school or a TV school, they're not going to teach you the rules of the game, but they're going to give you some idea of how things go. And they're going to give you the skills you need to kind of take it further. So talk about, going through that process.
So I was doing plays in high school, and I thought, well, maybe I want to do this. I started out behind the scenes, then I went on stage, and I got into LMU, go Lions. And my mom had said, look, you can try this, but after a year, you have to show me how you're going to earn a living off this, because I'm not spending 4 years of LMU tuition to have you be like waiting tables. So I felt a lot of pressure. And after I did my first audition, I was like, you know what? Seeing all the other talented people around me and how confident they were. And again, I've always been more shy than not. That was something that I was like, I don't know if I have the skin to be an actor and go on calls and constantly being rejected because, I'm too short or too whatever. So then I switched, and you had to take a technical theater class. You had to take I think it was a stagecraft class. That's what it is. And I fell in love with it. And I started volunteering after hours, just showing up at the shop, building sets, learning all the power tools. And it was a fascinating experience. And that by the end of that year, I showed my mom my first lighting plot and my first set design. She's like, yeah, okay, you can continue on in theater if you're doing technical. And that's what I ended up doing. And I loved it. It was, to me, again, all the excitement of being on stage, but I didn't have to speak in front of like hundreds or thousands of people. So that was why I chose technical theater.
And that's pretty cool, Michele. But the other part of that, which people don't realize, now, when you do TV, whether it's behind the scenes or it's on camera, it's not live. You record. So you can mess up until you get it right. But when it's theater, the production crew has to have everything right. The lighting crew, everything, the performers. I mean, theater, there is no margin for error. Now, I know the old saying, you could never mess up when it's live. Just improvise. But it could be nerve-wracking sometimes. And it always astounds me how both behind the scenes people and the performers, they go in night out and night after night, and they continue to do it so effortlessly, even though there's a lot of nerves that go with it.
Absolutely. And again, these are people who are like their parents, or they've got relationships, or they've got other stuff going on. And then they just leave that at the stage door and they go on and they entertain people for what, 2.5 hours. Going to the theater is, and also concert too, but theater is just to me such a magical place because these are just ordinary people who are so talented and they're just sharing that talent, and you're suspending all of the crazy stuff in the world for that short amount of time. To me, it's just one of the best things. So yeah, I was hoping to do that, but then I didn't want to move to New York. And so that's why I pivoted to film.
Right. And speaking of film, Michele, what people also don't realize, because he's been around the game for so long, but really when Will Smith made it as a big time actor, I mean, obviously the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, we know that, but on the big stage, it was Independence Day.
Yeah.
And that was 1996. And that was his big feature film. And you worked as an assistant behind the scenes on that film. So just talk about what that experience was like, because I mean, what an introduction in a lot of ways to have your first like work doing, you know, a film and things like that. Because that was a major film for the summer.
It was a really big deal. And I had a friend of mine. She was the office production coordinator. And I was in between, I just finished working on, I want to say Face Off or something like that on the B team. And I was looking for something because, you know, when you're working on a crew, you either day play or you sign on for like, 3 months or whatever the length of the film is, but it's freelance. So, and when you're just starting out, back then I was making maybe 100 a day, and that, you can't count on your job. So you're always running and gunning, looking for your next work. And so my friend was on Independence Day. She said, "Hey, I got a couple days for you. Do you want to come in as a set PA, just an extra PA?" Sure. So I went in and they were filming at the old Howard Hughes aircraft area. Now it's a huge condo place, but back then we were filming in the old aircraft buildings where they would build the aircrafts. And so they're not soundproof, they're drafty, they're dirty, whatever. But then there's like the White House, there's the alien ship, everything else is inside, right? So they needed a lot of PAs to keep everyone quiet because it wasn't soundproof. So if someone's like hammering outside and the next stage over, we could still hear it. So I got brought on and I got to work with, Will Smith, Jeff Goldblum, Margaret Collins, Robert Loggia, all these wonderful people who you recognize and, from all these different movies. And here I am, this like nobody skinny kid, like helping people out. And it was a really, really nice introduction to being part of such a big movie. And with, I don't think that I realized how big it was going to be. It was just a real honor to be in that. And be in that movie. And I will say I'm in that movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because they sent Margaret Collins home early and they needed to do a pickup shot. And so when she looks out the window and sees Jeff Goldblum and his dad in the street, that's actually me. And she's 5'10" and I'm 5'2 3/4. So there's a really actually big size difference if you look at it, because she's just much taller and they had me standing on apple boxes or whatever. But that was fun because I got paid for an actor for just that little 5 minutes of work. And it was wild. So now I can say I'm in Independence Day.
That's pretty cool. And the other thing too, though, Michele, that the work that goes into things like that. And I mean, you're constantly working and, there really is no rest. Like, because even when you're going home, that you're going to be back there quick and you're trying to, I'm sure there were some days where you didn't think you did as good as you could have, or maybe you had a rough day, because that goes with the territory. So I'm sure sometimes when you had those tough days, you were saying to yourself, God, I hope tomorrow's better, because you want to do the very best you can. But I also think that most of the time you probably did well, but everybody's their own worst critic. So, I mean, had to be fun, but also stressful as well, because you're part of something big here, even though it's behind the scenes for most of it, and you want it to really do well.
You're exactly right. And again, the other side of that too is you want to do well, but also if you don't do well, there are hundreds of people who would do your job for either less money or free because they want to put that foot in the door. So it's almost a paranoia of like, yes, you're tired. Yes, you've just worked and back then, I haven't been on a set in a while, so maybe they're better with the hours. But back then you could work like a 16-hour day. My longest day was 21 hours when I was working in Argentina. And then we had to jump on the plane the next, the day after the next. So it was wild, but you just work those hours, no complaints. Because if you put up too much of a fuss, they would just replace you. And there's no like you get 2 weeks notice, whatever, you're just out. So it was a lot of pressure, but I did get caught up in like the magic of, oh, I'm doing this. Every day was different. Every day was exciting. And, there's explosions or car chases or whatever the case may be, makeup. Maybe there's a chance where, again, like I could be on the shoot if they send someone home. So it was so different and unique that I'm glad I did it. But I think now I would not go back because the hours are so hard. You have to be so on even behind the camera. And you really want to do everything you can to make sure you keep your job.
Definitely. And, you kind of alluded to it a few seconds ago, getting on a plane. And, so the other thing is, you're not just going to the same set all the time. You could be traveling because however they want to do the shooting, where they want to film and things like that. And also too, let's be honest. Like I said, it came out in 96. They probably started filming it in 95. I mean, the internet was still very new. So trying to get plane reservations, things like that, it was like it used to be when you were young, when we were all younger. You could not just go to the internet and hit a quick button and you're set to go. So, I mean, I really admire how many people back then could find the time with everything else they're doing to make sure they make their travel arrangements as well, because you got so many things hitting you all at once.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, that was definitely the era of the travel agent. We used every production I worked on, we had a travel agent that we called. And nowadays it's really hard to find a travel agent because most people just book it themselves. But for me, the travel agent was always the way to go because they kept track of everything. And if your flight changed or whatever, they made it happen. And when I handled travel on Big Brother, we had, I think 100 contestants coming in for the auditions, right? No one could be on the same flight. They're coming to LA or going back home, and you couldn't have them cross at the airport when they arrived or cross in the lobby. So that was my job, to make sure I had a big matrix on my wall, making sure that no one crossed paths because no one could know who was auditioning. And then when you're at the hotel, you got to keep them all separate. So we moved into the hotel, and for I think it's 10 days, you're just making sure that they're entertained, they're staying in the room, they get their pool time, their gym time, their restaurant time, but no one could meet. So it was it's like a babysitter for adults. It was wild.
Right. And Michele, no doubt about it, the actors, they have a lot to do. They have to be in different scenes, put on different clothes, be at different parts. But the people behind the scenes, the ones that are making all this magic happen, I mean, so many things they're responsible for. It's not just filming and making sure that you have the wide shot the way you want it, things like that. I mean, if you're doing a show and there's a restaurant scene, well, guess what? You have to have a crew that's at a restaurant. You have to have food there. You have to have all this stuff. So, I mean, they are responsible for so many things just to do a movie, just to do one episode of something.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the work that they put in. And I always, whenever somebody would say, please take a couple seconds to look at the people that brought you this movie or brought you the sports or whatever it might be. And it's really true. People should take a few minutes to look at the people that do that stuff, because they really are the ones that are putting this all together. And then the actors go out there and they make sure they do it, like I said, tremendously, but the people behind the scenes really make it happen as well.
Absolutely. There's so many logistics to take care of, and actually you really want to shoot on a movie studio because then everything is just kind of contained and everything's usually right there. You very rarely have to bring in like a ton of stuff. But once I started working in entertainment, that's when, even to this day, I watch the credits to every single movie. All my friends and family groan because I'm like, we got to watch the credits, because all those people, I was that PA that no one saw my name because I'm like halfway down the end of the credits, when everyone's walking out so they can leave and not hit traffic in the parking lot. But there are so many people and they put so much time. And again, a lot of them just are unsung heroes with what needs to happen to make the movie, make it to the big screen. So I do try to show everyone the respect and watch all the credits. And it's just, it's something that a lot of people don't think about. You're right.
Right. And Michele, what happens a lot with people in the industry is usually they go from the smaller screen to the big screen. You went the opposite. You went from the big screen to the small screen. But I mean, the opportunity for you to do much more, you got to be a production manager. So you needed to do that. You had to make that switch. And you mentioned Big Brother, which you had a lot to do with. There's also extra yardage you've done and things like that. So just talk to me about making the transition from the big screen to the smaller screen.
So when I decided I wasn't going to do theater, I volunteered at the theater I was working at. I made $300 for 3 months work. I was stage managing a show, which was not working. I was also working at Hot Dog on a Stick and the Cheesecake Factory to make ends meet, living on someone's futon. And then I had an opportunity to volunteer for the theater. I met someone who offered me a job in Japan, but I didn't want to go work in Japan. So then he introduced me to someone at Kennedy Marshall. And that's what got me my first job in a film, Kathleen Kennedy, Frank Marshall. It was a great introduction. And then I'd worked at the office for a little over a year and I wanted more responsibility and they didn't really have any positions. So they got me a job on a movie working in the office as an office PA. I did that for a little bit. Then I went to set PA. And as I was working on a set PA, I realized if this is something I want to do, I should probably join the Directors Guild because in that way I could be an AD, an assistant director, and I could help run the set, make more money, travel. But to get into the Directors Guild, and I don't know what the requirements are now, but at the time, I think you had to have a minimum of 500 days working on a set. And once I reached that halfway point, I was like, do I keep pursuing this? Do I want to pursue something that's got more stability, regular hours? Because eventually I wanted to get married and have kids, and I didn't know how I'd manage that with working the unpredictable set life. So I got an opportunity to go on Evita, and I applied. Someone I was dating was on the crew at the time. And he had said, he's like, if you get the job, he's like, you're going to know whether you want to do this full time when you come back. And my God, he was right, because I went on Evita and it was by far one of the best experiences of my life. I was just supposed to be there for the Argentina portion because they wanted someone to speak Spanish on the American AD team. Because they had every country they went. They had a British team because Britain and American two companies were doing the movie together. Then they always had a local team, so Argentinian or Hungarian. And then when they were Argentina, the Americans, no one spoke Spanish. And I had taken Spanish just in high school. So I was like, okay, I took 4 years of Spanish and I'll go down. So I got the job and went down, like literally got the job, next day flew down. And I was set to be there for like, I think 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever. Well, my high school Spanish is not the same dialect as in Argentina, which I learned that real quick. But once we figured it out together, I got to see what everything was like. It was phenomenal working with Alan Parker, so many different experiences. But by the time I came back, I ended up getting picked up for the rest of the movie. But by the time I came back, I was gone for, I think, 3 months. Then I took like another month to travel around Europe for a little bit. I was like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then that's where I transitioned. I did trade shows for a little bit. I production coordinated trade shows for a company that did shows for Toyota and Coors, believe it or not. And then I transitioned into television and I started working at Film Garden, and I worked there or for Big Brother. Those were my entire experience working in television was for those two companies. And it was great. But just, again, even television, having a family, I had to make that choice. Did I want to be, working a lot and then having to compete? It took us a long time to have a kid. We kept having a lot of issues. So we decided that it was probably better for me just to let my career go so I could focus on being a mom, because I just didn't want to, it had taken so long to get pregnant. I didn't want to miss out on anything being a parent by, getting calls in the middle of the night because my film crew in like Turkey is having issues.
Right. Yeah. And that totally makes sense. I mean, it definitely does. But, to be able to do the things you've done, I think it all led to you becoming a writer because you saw different experiences, things like that. One of the things I want to ask you, Michele, and then we're going to get to this phenomenal rise and fall of Danny Trueheart. But one of the things that has always disappointed me, and I wanted your feelings on this, is it kind of started in the 90s and it's been this way for a long time now, is I always loved what I loved about TV series more than anything else were the different theme songs you would hear. Growing Pains, they had a great theme song. Different Strokes. I mean, there's so many of them. And then it's like in the middle 90s, I remember like a show called Family Matters. They kind of got rid of the theme song after like the 7th season. And so many other sitcoms just did away with theme songs. I mean, did that disappoint you as well? Because I really believe that that's something that should have always stayed. And like now, you don't even know sometimes who the actors are, who's playing this one or who's playing that one, because you don't see the face when they do the credits. They just show the credits and that's it. I always was disappointed by that.
I actually agree. And how many times have I been, or you been with your friends? I've been with my friends, and we start singing the Facts of Life song or the Different Stroke song or whatever, because it basically was just like the anthem for that thing. And we were all watching the same thing because it was must-see TV. There was no recording it at the time. There was, everything was, because VHS tapes, I'm dating myself, but to record on a VHS was really expensive for my mom at the time because she was a single mom with 3 kids. So it was like you had a reservation. I'm not doing anything on Thursday at 8. I want to watch those shows. So I do think that the theme show is part of the whole package of showing up on time for that once, whether your reservation with that show, you talk about the next day with your friends, and the theme song like just kicked everything off. And I feel like, yeah, I don't know if it was budgetary issues too, because to get a song made, to make sure that it's well, then you got to license it with that person unless you're buying it outright, and then that's expensive. And then I also think it's just lengthwise because they're trying to squeeze in more commercials. They're trying to trim where they can. So that's why I think the beginning and ending credits are so quick, because they really want to get maximum advertising time. And then they don't want to cut away from the story too much. And then they cut away the credits. So that's why the crew and the actors suffer a little bit. So I agree. I think the internet too, because everyone's on social media, you can stream a whole series like in one night if you want when it drops. And I think that takes away from the excitement and the water cooler talk the next day, or like the talk at school. I feel like it's nice for the viewer, but I think that something's lost as well. That what's going to happen? What do you think? That was so much fun about watching TV back then.
Right, definitely. And you had mentioned the Gold of America. You are one of the proud producers of the Gold of America. So that's got to be another thing that you could say in your career that you're very proud of that you do, because that's important as well. It really is. Not many people realize the basis of the Gold of America, but I mean, it's got to be something that you're extremely proud of, that you're one of those producers for that.
I don't think that was me, the Gold of America.
Oh, okay.
No, sorry about that, but I don't think that's something that I did. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. When I was researching, it was on there. So.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So. But not a big deal.
Yeah.
So,
sorry about that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Michelle. Talk to me a little bit about, because again, you've taken your talents everywhere and you decided to be an author in addition to everything else you were doing. But number one, talk to me how you decided you wanted to write a book, and what was the inspiration behind the rise and fall of Danny Trueheart?
Well, when I got pregnant, it's a high-risk pregnancy, and so I had to take time off of work until the first trimester was over, and then we decided I wasn't going to go back because the stress was causing a lot of complications with my pregnancy. So once I had my baby, he was 6 months old, and after about 6 months, I don't know if you have kids or not, but after 6 months, they calm down a little bit. They get into routine, and I found I had a lot of spare time when he was napping or whatnot. And so I was looking for something to occupy myself because I'm used to working really long hour days. And so a friend of mine suggested that why don't I start writing? Because when I was working, I would pitch shows here and there to my different bosses, and I'd write up little pitches or whatever, but nothing ever came of it. So I was like, okay. And so I thought about writing, but then I was like, I don't want to go to a library. I can't bring, baby to the library. So what can I write about that I don't have to do a lot of research? And then I started I thought, I know a lot about entertainment. And so that's kind of was the genesis of that. And I really, then social media was kind of just blowing up at the time. And so I wanted to write about just the effects of fame on a teenager as they grow into adulthood. And then I just started thinking about what I'd seen, because even though I didn't work with that many kids or underage actors growing, in my career, I did work with a few, and you could see the difference between the parents that were very involved and who really safeguarded their kids, and then the ones that just kind of showed up and let the studio teacher watch their kid while they're on their phone or they're like walking around outside smoking a cigarette. So, and there's you really have to, safeguard your kid and make sure that you're involved in all the decisions, because, you've got producers and everyone else trying to, they've got a schedule to keep, they're making money off your kid. You want to make sure that you're there saying yes and no, and that you're involved in all the decisions. So for me, that was something that was really important to kind of explore, because I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Right. And Michelle, talk to me about how proud you are of this outstanding book, because let me tell you right now that, I mean, it's your baby. It's you put it together, you created it. And just talk to me about the inspiration for the characters, things like that. How did it all come about?
Well, you're absolutely right. This is, I think, by far one of the things I'm most proud of, career-wise, because just to finish a book, the first book took 7 years to write because I hadn't really committed to being a writer. I wasn't really sure. I had a lot of doubts. And then when I finally committed to, I'm just going to see if I can finish a book. And I did. And I eventually got the courage to hand it to a couple of people to read, and they liked it. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can see if I can get an agent. So everything was, I just kept moving my goalposts. And so then I was querying, and I queried an embarrassing amount of agents. You're supposed to stop around like 50 to 80. And I went well past that. And it wasn't until I reached out to one of the old contestants on Big Brother on the season, one of the seasons I'd worked on, and he and I had stayed in contact. And I know he had written a couple books. He's wrote nonfiction. He was an FBI agent, and he was writing about his career. And so I reached out and I'm like, do you have any tips? How did you get your agent? And he offered just a quick email introduction to his agent. And then I emailed her, and she was interested, but she hadn't represented young adult authors before. So I sent her the manuscript, and she asked me to do a proposal, which is a nightmare document, because you've got to like summarize all your chapters in like 2 to 3 sentences. You've got to write a 2-page summary, a 3-paragraph summary, and then an elevator pitch, your whole book in a sentence, how you'd market yourself, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot. Like, you've written a whole book, and then you're writing another book when you're writing the proposal. But she picked it up. She thought she could sell it. And for me, that was such like, just to get someone who believed in my work enough that they think they can sell it. That was like just imposter syndrome. Like, that's what blew up my imposter syndrome, because I'm always doubtful as a writer. No matter how many books I've written, 2 more since then that my agent's working on selling now, I'm still like, can I write books? Is this okay? Was it just a fluke, even after this first series? And then like 6 months later, she landed a publisher. So I'm in awe that I've been able to do this whole thing, because it was started out as like, it would be a dream, but I didn't think I'd be able to achieve it. And so I don't measure I can't look at my success measuring it against like Colleen Hoover or J.K. Rowling or any big writer, because that's like Super Bowl level of success. But for someone who never thought they'd be doing this, to be writing consistently, to have consistent sales, because my first book came out 6 years ago this year,
right,
and it's still selling. So I think that is really, really huge for me. The fact that there's still an interest in what we're saying, and it's still relevant, because even though social media isn't pop singing, the effects of fame are still all the same. And it's so much easier now for young people to become famous with social media and online platforms, that I think that people need to be really well aware of the pressures of getting into the spotlight and maintaining that position in the spotlight. It's very, very dangerous for your mental health. So I'm hoping that comes across in the book. So I feel like that's helping people too.
Right. And Michelle, bookstores are now a lost art these days. I mean, there's very few left, but there are some left. I mean, has there ever been a time when you went to a bookstore and you just happened to see your book in there? I mean, if you did, you have to smile, because you know that, guess what? Your book sits on a shelf in one of the bookstores. That's got to be something to be proud of.
It does. I'm in a couple of local Barnes and Nobles. I'm at my local Beachtown Books in San Clemente. They carry all the local authors here, which is really, really great. And it really does give you just a sense of validation, knowing like if someone emails me online, we're carrying your book in the store. It just, because that's the whole goal. Online sales are great, but being, I guess, marketable enough to earn that spot on a physical bookshelf in a bookstore across America or around the world is really just like, it's an honor, and it's just something that never gets old. I'm always very grateful for that.
Right. And Michelle, I was thinking about this. I don't know if this is anything you've ever entertained doing, but one of the things I think would be really cool is 2 ways of doing a podcast. One, I think it'd be awesome if you did a podcast and kind of talked about the rise and fall of Danny Trueheart, and kind of went over each character, each thing. And, if people wanted to discuss it, it'd be really cool. You could do a continuous series of podcasts with that. But the other thing is, because you're so talented as a writer, because what the struggles like, I think it'd be really cool for you to do some type of podcast where, you have different authors come on and you talk about different things, or you have people that are aspiring to be authors and you kind of could give them little tips that they could work on to be better writers and things like that. And I think you have that ability. And I really think that'd be something cool for you to do in the podcast world.
I would, if I didn't get so nervous every single time I had to speak publicly, I absolutely would. Because I didn't have anyone. I had my friend Jack Owens, who introduced me to my agent at 9 Speakers. He helped me. But I didn't have anyone to ask any questions about how do you go about writing a book? Like, when do you stop? Like, how does everything work? And then how do you query? How do you whatever? I did a lot of deep diving on the internet. And the one thing I wasn't on social media until my agent said, I won't sign you until you are on social media. So all I do is post about books or my writing. But one thing I learned was in the writing communities online, they are so helpful. And I feel that for the most part, everyone is there to lift each other up and to share their information, and they help promote other people's books. And no one sees it as, well, your success is taken away from my success. And I think that's so important, because let's say you and I wrote books on, like, let's say like a football game. We would write 2 separate books. No author is going to write the same story exactly the same. So even though there are a bunch of books about pop singers that are teenagers, there's no series like mine. And I think that that's what's so important. And I think people who want to write lose sight of, they feel like, oh, well, how am I going to break in? There are thousands of books published every day. Well, there are, but no one's going to tell the story like you are. So I do on my platforms, and like I mentored someone through the Women's Fiction Writers Association, which I would love to do again, because it was such a great experience to be able to answer questions, because I'm further along in my career than some people, but I have other people who are further along than me who I reach out to and ask questions like, how do you make that jump to that next level? And I feel like for the most part, and I'm sure you probably find this with your podcast too, people who genuinely love what they do are always happy to help other people out. I don't know if you have that experience at all, but so that's what I like to do. I like to help other people out because I wish I had someone to help me out.
Yeah, it makes sense. It really does. And I think the other thing, Michele, that writers should be encouraged to do, and this may sound strange to somebody that's a writer or somebody that's trying to publish a book, but you you kind of have to encourage them to fail. And what I mean by that is there's going to be, you're going to take it to the publisher maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4 times before he or she says, okay, I'll work on this book with you, because there's going to be mistakes, and you're going to have to keep going back, and you're going to have to keep writing, and you're not going to just publish a book in 3 months. It might take a year. Like you said, it took you 7 years. It might take 3 years, whatever the case, but you have to be willing to fail if you want to succeed. So I think that's what is important about being a writer is don't be afraid to fail. Failing is okay as long as in the end, you understand that you'll eventually succeed.
I 100% agree. It's literally a lesson in, you know what, this isn't working. So check that off list. Now I know what not to do. And then I've got to try something else. And I have to say, like, the reason I was able to land this agent, I had another agent when I was querying, and she rejected me like 5 or 6 times. But with every rejection, she said, this is what I want to see. Send it back to me when you're done. So I'd make all these changes. I used to have the story being told from like 6 different characters, and half of them were adult. And she said, I want to lose all the adults. Teenagers don't care about adult perspective. I want you to put it in the first person, take it out of the third person voice, and really focus on Danny. And that's what I did. And then that's when I heard from my current agent, and she wanted it. And so I went back to this agent, and she still wasn't ready to take it on. She was a new agent just starting out, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to take a chance yet. So then I went with my agent, and she loved it, and she was able to sell it. She had some suggestions. And then when I got picked up by a publisher, they had some suggestions. But one thing I do want to say too is there's always a question of, do you want to independently publish, or do you want to go with a traditional and be published by rep by an agent and be published? For me, because it was a business I knew nothing about, I felt like I wanted my agent who could help me with contracts and whatnot, and a publisher who was experienced, who knew what they were doing. And I don't feel like I've ever given up anything as far as book covers, characters, anything. I've compromised on some things, but the compromises were better they're a better choice. And I remember one thing, the first book, my publisher wanted to change the title. the rise and fall of Danny Trueheart. I don't want people to think that there's going to be something that's bad happening to her. And it's too close to the rise and fall of, I forget what it was, the original title of some classic book. I forget what it was. And I was really upset. And my agent's like, write him a letter and fight for it. Explain to him why he needs to keep this title. And I did. And then he kept it. So I do think that if you're with a good publisher, they're going to listen to the author, but they're also going to guide you to make sure that you're not making decisions that are going to like hinder you from having a broad audience. So I know a lot of people love independent publishing because they have all the control, but for me, I don't know what I'm doing. So I think that's too much control for me to have.
Right. So let me ask you, Michele, you mentioned it earlier that you're working on something now, a project, a new book, and you don't have to tell the title if you want to keep it a surprise, but what could we expect and when do you have like a timetable of when it might be released?
So right now we're shopping it around with different publishers. Some really big names have been looking at, which has been awesome, but it's a different genre. It is more women's fiction comedy. And it is about a young woman who finds herself under police investigation, dealing with the mob and trying to turn her business from an illegal business into a legal business. She inherited a business that she didn't realize was illegal. So, and it's kind of a fish out of water comedy. And it's got a lot of different moving parts to the story, but it's something that I actually had the idea of before the rise and fall of Danny Trueheart. And I tried to pitch it as a television series. And I got a little bit of play from Univision, but then they didn't want to do it. So then I just had it in a drawer for years. And so when I finished with the rise and fall of Danny Trueheart, my agent's like, so what do you think of doing next? And I threw it out to her and she's like, why didn't you come to me with this story first? And I'm like, well, because your first series, you're trying to make a name for yourself. You know, you might not sell, it might not be as big. I'm like, I wanted to save this for the second series because I knew this one's going to be really big. And she's like, I forgot you were in the business before. She's like, yeah, you're right. So she's pitching it right now. We're hoping it's going to come through. And I think it'll definitely be a different take on my normal writing because it's not a young adult series, but it's a comedy and it's definitely should be very interesting. So.
Right. And the stories that you could tell, Michele, in the career you've had, you could also, again, implement comedy in them. And I was thinking about this. Is there ever a thought that you would write a book with an exaggerated part of yourself, like writing about you in a way, about your years of doing things and the different, things you saw in the business and things like that, but kind of doing like an exaggeration where it's funny as well. And it's not just, oh, when I went home, I had all this stress because I had a rough day, but you could have some humor with it too. Has there ever been a thought of maybe writing about yourself in an exaggeration type way?
It's funny you mentioned that, Mike, because I was just talking with a friend of mine and we had, he had flown out. I was doing an interview for another show and I had a bunch of my friends from like my early days back in film and we were all together. We hadn't been together for a while and we were there. They went to the interview to hear it. And then we all went to dinner afterwards. And he was saying, it's like, you should do something because all your stories were wild when you were in your 20s and you're all, living paycheck to paycheck but dealing with all of these celebrities in these crazy situations that happen. Because, you have to be prepared for anything that happens with work. I was asked to sandbag one of my boss's home once during a rainstorm. I had to go dress as Barney for a birthday party. And the boss's sister was worried I didn't have enough theme park character experience to play the part of Barney at her son's 9-year-old birthday party. It was wild. So all of these different things that happen to you as part of your daily job, it was nuts. So I do think about that. That is something that's on my radar, to do a little comedy about how difficult it is to be in the business, and especially I think next to maybe the characters' friends all have regular jobs or going to medical school or they're working in a bank and then you're doing all this crazy stuff. So I do think that would be interesting to have that as a story. So it's in the back of my head.
That's pretty cool. I was thinking about this, Michele, with all the things you've done in your life, all the accomplishments, the books, the production with TV, with film, and you see that nice hardware behind you that you've earned because you've worked so hard for it. But I have to believe, Michele, because you mentioned this a little bit as you were talking about when you wrote your book, you talked about it wasn't easy to have your first child, but you were able to have your son. And to me, that had to be the thing that you're proudest the most about, because I mean, being a mom to him had to be worth everything that you could possibly have in your career, because I mean, I could tell there's a bond there. So, I mean, talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, and again, like, and that's why I was very clear, like my book series and like doing Evita, those are the best things that happened in my career. Because by far and wide, my husband and son are the best things that happened to us. And we struggled to get pregnant. There was no reason. We had a bunch of losses. We could not get pregnant. So when we finally got pregnant, after like 6 years of trying, that's why I was like, you know what? And I had one day where I had a complication. I had to leave work, go to my doctor. And she was like, I'm taking you off work and putting you on bed rest for 3 months, because it's not worth losing your baby because someone's freaking out because you cut their budget on their show. So it just is like, okay. So, and that's what I did. And I really realized that as much as I liked work and I really found joy in my work, the priority was going to be our son and my family. So that's why I put a pin in that. And when I write while our son's at school. And I try not to do anything on a weekend or after school unless I'm on a deadline. And he's older now too, so now he can handle a little bit. But it just is, I try to make sure that the focus is always family first. And when I do like posts or whatever I'm doing, I want to make sure that like everyone's proud. I'm not doing anything that's like embarrassing anyone, because again, like what's most important is our family and our son. And it just has been such a good accomplishment. And so to be able to be a mom and then wrap this writing career around that is just, it's been really great. It could be stressful, but it's really, really great.
Right. And Michele, this is why I think more celebrities should be open to doing podcasts. And a lot of them don't. They don't want to, they work a lot, and I get that. And they don't want to do them. But here's the reason they should. Because the amount of people that I've interviewed in these last several years, and, you know, a good friend of mine, she became a good friend of mine having her on my show, was Karen Richmond, who you know very well.
She's great.
So many of them that I interview, they're just real people like anybody else. Yes, they have a much bigger platform than myself or somebody else, but they've never lost sight of who they are as human beings. And I see that with Karen. I've seen that with Dean Butler. I've seen it with yourself, so many people. And that's why I think more celebrities should have the opportunity to go on podcasts to, explore this, because people would get to know them, not just because they played a character in this movie or that show or whatever. They would know the human being. So I wish they would be more open to that, because people would really get to see who they are.
Well, I agree, because I feel that, again, like when you're seeing social media, you're seeing articles in a magazine or something on the news, it's all very curated, right? Unless it's like celebrities are just like us and they're like a mess, like at the parking meter or whatever. But I mean, so it's very curated. So it can make individuals, just regular Joes like us, it can make us feel like, oh, I could never do that. I could never be that. I could never try that. And I think I think anyone can put their mind to something and go way farther than they thought if they just don't give up and they just try. Because I think that it's important to chap those really ridiculous big dreams, as well as the achievable dreams, and then like just the little accomplishments. I think everyone needs to dream big. So whether you want to be an actress or a podcast host or a writer or whatever it is, I think when you set that as a goal, even if it's a pie in the high school, you're subconsciously aligning yourself all the time. You're making choices to lead you down that path. And I think celebrities like Karen Richmond, and even you, when you host, I think everyone just showing that they're just real people who wake up in the morning, they might have a cold, whatever, that we're all just real people accomplishing these things. I think it makes everything more doable for other people. And I think a lot of times fear keeps people from trying all these things. And it's a shame, because I mean, I would have never been a writer had I just not kept going, even though I was like, I think my writing's not good. It might not go anywhere, but I just kept going. Every project I do, I'm worried that it's a fluke and it's not going to work. And, you have to push through those doubts.
Right. So Michele, before we go, what advice would you give to somebody that whether it's they want to be an actor, or they want to be an artist, or they want to, be a writer, whatever it might be, what advice would you give them to further their career in that and to make it? Because as you know, it's not easy to make it in any of that. It takes a lot of work and sacrifice. So what advice would you give them?
Well, I know for me, I just always work. Even if I'm not sure about it, I don't give up. You have to stick with it, whatever it is. And I know that connecting with other writers has really, really helped me because I ask questions. We compare about what our writing process is. I'm always learning how to be a better writer, how to be a better book marketer, how to do interviews. I'm improving my skills all the time. So I think that's the key, is because if you're always willing to learn, each and every project you do is going to be better and better and better. And the book I finished just now is better than than Rising Star, my first book. And I hope all my books get better and better and better. So that is the biggest thing, is just to be open. And I love to help people, like I said, that because I didn't have anyone to ask questions to. So when I will comment on someone's Instagram about something, and if they reach out to me, we'll chat back and forth, and I'm happy to help them out with whatever I can, because I wish that I had someone to talk to. So if I can help someone get that confidence, or say that this is totally normal, or, maybe you should look at this instead of doing that, I'm happy to do it, because I think all of us could use a little bit of help with advice with someone who's already in the business that you want to be in.
Well, that's really cool. That's great advice. Michele, first off, I want to thank you for coming on today and giving me a few minutes. It was a real honor for me, and I always wanted to interview you, and I really enjoy your writing. Again, I mean, you've done so many other things, but the writing is just phenomenal. I mean, it's believable, and that's the most important thing. And I really do applaud you, because whatever you set out to do, you go out and you go get it. You don't let anything stop you. And I love the fact that you're always nervous, because I think making you nervous makes you more, it makes you want to go grab it and go get it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I love that you're willing to admit that. You're not afraid to admit that you get nervous. I think that's something that makes you a very strong person. So keep up the great work. I know the best is still yet to come. And thank you again for giving me a few minutes.
Well, I again, like everything that you just said, it means so much to me, because I have so many doubts about like everything all the time. So just knowing that like my books are not your demographic, and knowing that you find them interesting and that you like them, that means so much to me, because it just makes it feel like, okay, I'm doing it right, and I can just keep going ahead. And the doubts will come back, but it means a lot to writers. And so that's why reviews and like feedback to writers, it's always a good thing, because we can be learning from it, or it validates what we're trying to do. So I really thank you for taking the time to say that, because it just means so much.
Well, thank you again. Like I said, it was an honor for me, and I'll definitely have you back on when that new project comes out.
I would love it.
I definitely want to have you back on, but thank you again, and best of luck going forward.
Thanks, and good luck with the show. You're doing great. Again, I'm now like a listener, because I listened to a couple podcasts before. You just do such a good job with your research and your questions. It's more like a conversation. So it really puts me, who's nervous, at ease. I'm still nervous, but it puts me at ease, because you're just so prepared and you're just so casual about it. I love it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the nice compliment. Again, I get nervous as well. So when I hear things like that, it validates it for me. So thank you for those kind words. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. And there you have it, folks. You just got to know Michele Kwasniewski for the last hour. And I could tell you this, that I knew this was going to be an outstanding guest that we would have today. And the reason was, if you watch her writing and you read what she writes, the stories she writes, I mean, this is a passionate person, and you cannot make it in the field she does without having passion. Because if you're just going to do it for a job and nothing else, it's not going to work. People have to believe in you. They have to believe what you're telling them is true, and what your work is factual and things like that. And she does that each and every day. She is a determined young lady who is not satisfied with just resting on her laurels. She wants to go out there and continue to be better than she was the time before. And each day she strives to be better, because she's realized that you could keep learning and you could keep being better. And that's the reason why she is so successful. You saw the story she told you, just the inspiration for the book she did, the behind the scenes with TV, behind the scenes with film, all that stuff. But more importantly, her greatest accomplishment to her is being a mother and being a wife. And to me, she understands that at the end of the day, we all go home to our families. No matter what happens, that's the most important thing. And her proudest moment is being a mother. And as great of a writer as she is, because she is wonderful, She's just as good as a mother, just as good as a wife. And that really tells you more than anything else, the kind of human being she is. So I would tell you this, folks, take her advice, because everything she told us today is true. She gets nerves. That's okay to get nerves. She's failed a few times. We all fail sometimes. But is she going to give up? No. She is never going to stop until she reaches that highest mountain, and she's reached it many times. So take it from Michele Kwasniewski that keep dreaming and don't ever stop, because dreams do come true. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying goodbye, everyone.
Bye.